different approach to dealing with illegal drugs, a modern-day war on drugs, and it was clearly failing to address this crisis. I was a law professor with experience in government and had helped change laws and policies before. I had contacts in law enforcement and the community. I knew how to get a message out through the media and had contacts with a major publisher. And with tenure, I could take controversial positions based on my research. It was time to act. I set out to investigate the opioid crisis without any team or funding in place. That would come later. It was a leap of faith. My aim was to find out why the crisis was happening, what was being done about it, and what more could be done to save lives. I would follow the trail of evidence wherever it led. I dropped everything to kickstart my research, and given that this was a public health emergency, I didn't want to wait a year or two to apply for traditional research grants. Instead, I proposed raising the money I'd need via crowdfunding. The law school put the brakes on that idea. Fortunately, an individual donor stepped up to cover the costs of a research assistant, travel, and transcription services for the interviews I needed to do. Within a month or two, I'd read all the current reports on the problem and gotten ethics approval to launch the study. Then I hit the streets. I quickly learned that BC is the epicenter of the opioid crisis in Canada, and that Vancouver, Surrey, and Victoria have been hardest hit. So that's where I focused my investigation. I interviewed 42 leading experts with over 500 years of combined professional experience. I met with police chiefs, drug squad investigators, undercover police agents, border guards, intelligence analysts, firefighters, prosecutors, defense lawyers, judges, healthcare officials, medical doctors, addiction specialists, community-based service organizations, indigenous organizations, activists, advocates, and organizations representing people who use drugs. I crisscrossed the BC Lower Mainland and traveled to Victoria to see firsthand what was happening. I filed Freedom of Information requests to get access to government records. I analyzed and wrote up my findings as soon as I received interview transcripts back, working from early in the morning before the kids were awake to late into the night. Burning the midnight oil, I felt like I was back in law school again, except now I needed to take a 15-minute nap in the afternoon. I was looking for answers to the tough questions I had, questions I kept hearing every time the opioid crisis seemed to pop up in conversation. What is the opioid crisis? Why is fentanyl killing so many people? Why do people start using? Why can't they stop? Has criminalizing drugs failed? Why are dealers killing their customers? Can we stop fentanyl at its source? Who's been hardest hit? Can we prosecute our way out? What is naloxone, and is it the solution? Don't supervised injection sites enable drug use? Is providing safe drugs giving up on people? How can we help people stop using? Won't decriminalization make things worse? How can we solve this crisis? By the end of my intensive 100-day investigation, I'd made a complete 180-degree turn. I was convinced the misguided war on drugs was not only a total failure, it was actually making things worse. The casualties of this war include the thousands who've died from illicit drug overdoses, most often dying alone because of the stigma that flows in large part from criminalization. Their suffering was invisible to most of us. They were counted only as they died. And unless something radical is done today, countless more of our neighbors, friends, and loved ones risk the same fate. This book is a chronicle of my investigation into the opioid crisis. It's a story about lives lost and people saved. It's a story of heartbreak and hope, a raw, tragically real story that I never expected to write but felt compelled to set down. For me, it's also part of my story of personal transformation, a change of mind and of heart. Chapter 1. What is the opioid crisis? I don't think anybody really saw this coming. Dr. Mark Tyndall, Executive Director, BC Centre for Disease Control. A sleepy suburb on the outskirts of Greater Vancouver was about to get a wake-up call, in more ways than one. At 1:30 a.m., the stillness of a balmy late summer night in Delta.